Hare Krishna? Okay, you can hear me. Okay, today we're going to be reading from Canto 5. Canto 5 is did I have my notes? Canto 5 is the creative impetus, and Chapter 6, the activities of Lord Rishabhdev, and the verse is number 5. Kamo Manu, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Kamo Manyo Madoloba. Shoka Moha Bhayadaya. Kama Bandhascha Yanmulaha. Sri Kuryat Ko Nutar Buddha. Kamo Manyo Madoloba. Shoka Moha Bhayadaya. Kama Bandhascha Yanmulaha. Sri Kuryat Ko Nutar Buddha. Kamo Manyo Madoloba. Shoka Moha Bhayadaya. Kama Bandhascha Yanmulaha. Sri Kuryat Ko Nutar Buddha. Kamo Manyo Madoloba.
Kamo manyur madoloba, shoka moha bayadaya, karma bandhaschayan mula, svikuryat konutad buddha.
Mataji's?
Kamo manyur madoloba,
Shoka Mahabhayadaya Kama Bandhaschayan Mulaha Svikurya Konutat Buddha. Okay. Word for word. Kamaha, lust. Manyuha, anger. Madaha, pride. Lobha, greed. Shoka, lamentation. Moha, illusion. Bhaya, fear. Adayak, all these together. Karma bandha, bondage to fruitive activities. Cha, and yat mulaha, the origin of which Sri Kuryat would accept kaha, who, nu, indeed, tat, that mind, buddha, if one is learned. Translation: the mind is the root cause of lust, anger, pride, greed, lamentation, illusion and fear. Combined, these constitute bondage to fruitive activity. What learned man would put faith in the mind? Please repeat. The mind is the root cause of lust, anger, pride, greed, lamentation, illusion and fear. Combined, these constitute bondage to fruitive activity. What learned man would put faith in the mind? Okay, and the purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The mind is the original cause of material bondage. It is followed by many enemies such as anger, pride, greed, lamentation, illusion and fear. The best way to control the mind is to engage it always in Krishna consciousness. Save manaha Krishna padara vindayo. Since the followers of the mind bring about material bondage, we should be very careful not to trust the mind. Just to read the translation again. The mind is the root cause of lust, anger, pride, greed, lamentation, illusion and fear. Combined, these constitute bondage to fruitive activity. What learned man would put faith in the mind? Okay, I'll recite the invocation prayers. Om Jnana Timrandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshir Malitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitamtam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Prijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namustate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Adi Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sata Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. First of all, I'd like to offer my obeisances to my spiritual master, His Holiness Bhakti Swami, Namo Vishnupadaya, Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Swami Tenamane, and to ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada, Namo Vishnupadaya, Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tenamane, Namaste Saraswati Devi, Gauravani Pachayane, Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pashyatya Desatarine. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to speak today as well. My name's Krishna Govinda. I'm actually a resident from the UK, and I sort of do my service at Bhaktivedanta Manor and also at ISKCON London for their Lordship Shri Shri Radha Landaneshwar. I kindly ask the blessings of my spiritual master and to Srila Prabhupada, and also the blessings of all the senior devotees and all the devotees here present, so I could talk on something on these beautiful topics of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His devotees. So we're just reading about the activities of Lord Rishabhdev. So Lord Rishabhdev is actually the plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was actually the emperor of the world. But at a later stage in his life, he actually wanted to renounce everything, his kingdom, his family, his wealth, his opulence. He had 100 sons, and one of the sons was King Bharat. King Bharat, as we know, is known as Bharatavarsha. It's also the story within the Srimad Bhagavatam where his became very attached to a deer when he was also renounced. And as an attachment to the deer, when he passed away, he got the body of a deer. But through Krishna's mercy, he was also able to remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. And in his next life, he became Jad Bharat. But just to give a little background about Rishabhdev, if it's all right with you, I'm just going to read something which you've already covered, but just as a refresher for all of you, and perhaps somebody who've just attended the class. I'm just going to read from a previous verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam about the qualities of Rishabhdev when he was coming to retirement. After accepting the feature of an Avaduta, a great saintly person without material cares, Lord Rishabhdev passed through human society like a blind, deaf and dumb man, an idle stone, a ghost or a madman. Although people called him such names, he remained silent and did not speak to anyone. So if you can imagine, this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he was actually acting as a dumb man, actually as if he had no care in the world at all, even though his body was considered to be material, his body was spiritual, but through the potency of Yoga Maya, he considered his body to be material, so he neglected his body, he had unkempt hair, he grew his hair very long, he was walking around naked as well. So when people saw him, they thought he was just a madman because he was acting very deaf and dumb as well. And then it goes on, wherever he travelled, all bad elements surrounded him. So this is a capital H, so it's showing that he is a supreme person, just as the flies around the body of an elephant coming from a forest. He was always being threatened, beaten, urinated upon and spat upon. Sometimes people threw stones, stool and dust at him. Sometimes people passed foul air before him. So can you imagine when you see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because we are blinded by illusion, we don't actually see this person as being the Supreme Person, and also he was trying to take the potency of just not being recognized as the Supreme Lord. Normally when you see the Supreme Lord, He has unlimited qualities of six opulences, fame, beauty, renunciation, intelligence, wisdom, strength. But here, Lord Rishabdev was actually showing the opposite of those qualities. He didn't want to show his supremacy as the Supreme Lord, so people were just seeing him as a very naked mendicant. Thus people called him many bad names and gave him a great deal of trouble. But he did not care about this, for he understood that the body is simply meant for such an end. He was situated on the spiritual platform, and being in his spiritual glory, he did not care for all these material insults. In other words, he completely understood that matter and spirit are separate, and he had no bodily conception. Thus, without being angry at anyone, he walked through the whole world alone. Now, I'll just show you this picture. I remember seeing this picture when I was a young boy, and I couldn't really understand it until I saw, or when I read it later on. So you may have seen this picture of Lord Rishabdev walking on the street, naked, and being harassed by all the local people, beaten, even the dogs were barking at him, flies were hovering around him. And although he had a saintly halo around him, it was very difficult for me to understand why were they people being so nasty to this person. He looked so saintly as well. But then as I read the Srimad Bhagavatam, I realized that this was his desire to show to everyone who want to become a devotee how to completely surrender themselves, be detached from the material body. Of course, when we look at the mirror, we're very attached. How much hair we have, how do we look, are we presentable, the way we dress, everything. Even though as devotees we have to be presentable, because Srila Prabhupada says we have to act as gentlemen. So there are wonderful devotees in the movement. And even if you see Radhanath Swami, he looks so beautiful from a facial feature, from his presence. But still, when you are very close to him, he's got holes in his dhotis. And it's so amazing to see such an elevated spiritual personality. Some of you may have known a devotee called Tribhuvanath Prabhu, who was a great Sankirtan devotee. He was lead Sankirtan programs in the places that many devotees weren't allowed to go, in the Middle East. In the 80s, he was preaching there. In Russia, he was preaching there. He was put away in prison. He was. We did a wonderful festival in Israel in the 90s. In Africa as well, he used to do a lot of preaching. But when you look at him, even though he spoke so amazingly, he was very, very shabby looking. He had creased dhotis and holes in his dhoti. He wasn't attached to the way he looked, but he wanted to present Prabhupada's Krishna consciousness philosophy to everyone. So it's also a lesson for us. Although we may be attached, and we have to take care of ourselves, no doubt about it, but at the same time, there's a point in our life where we come to where we understand that we are not this body, and that we have to completely surrender unto Krishna, who will take care of everything for our needs, for our spiritual needs. So King Rishabdev, although he had 100 sons, he wanted to give everything up. He wanted to give up his family, he wanted to give up his great fortune. He was the emperor of the world. And even, as I mentioned, he was a plenary expansion of the Supreme Lord. It was actually an example to all of us, just like his son, King Bharat. He gave everything up, leave his palace, leave his beautiful wives, and just go to the forest and just surrender himself and just live very simply. So now, on this particular verse, it says, if I go back to, just before I go into that verse, if I just read a little bit more on Rishabdev, King Rishabdev. I just had it here somewhere. Just make sure this is the one. Yeah, this is from text 1 from Canto 5, Chapter 4. Just explaining about who Lord Rishabdev is as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This translation by Srila Prabhupada. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, as soon as the Lord was born as the son of Maharaj Nabi, he manifested symptoms of the Supreme Lord, such as marks on the bottoms of his feet, the flag, the thunderbolt, etc. This son was equal to everyone and very peaceful. He could control his senses and his mind and possessing all opulence. He did not hanker for material enjoyment. Endowed with all these attributes, the son of Maharaj Nabi became more powerful day after day. Due to this, the citizens, learned, brahmanas, demigods, and ministers wanted Rishabdev to be appointed ruler of the world. So you can see his position as Maharaj Rishabdev, as the emperor of the world. He was recognized by the citizens, by the learned brahmanas, to not just be an ordinary person, but he was actually of a person of responsibility, of intelligence, of caliber, to rule the kingdom nicely. But yet, when he became detached from that particular position, he became a mendicant, he became an avaduta, became naked, walking around. But the treatment he had was the opposite. Now, can you imagine when you go on the street? I know many of you devotees go out on Sankirtan, and it's not easy because sometimes you get so many wonderful people who want to talk to you, take a book, speak to you. Sometimes you have the opposite effect where people are very aggressive, they're very drunk, they really say horrible things and nasty things. And even though we're trying to be devotees and not be, or rather be attached to ourselves and any sort of unkind words, but because we're still conditioned, we still have a certain feeling, well, Krishna, why is this person being so horrible to me? Why is this person harassing me? Why is this person bullying me? Or I'm just giving them a book and you're asking me to give this book so we could actually give this spiritual wisdom to all the fallen conditioned souls. But if they've been negative, why should I go out on the street? But here, this is the opportunity that we learn that we have to completely detach ourselves from these ill feelings and just be like Lord Nityananda, where he was going door to door. Even drunken people like Jagdai Madai were throwing stones at him or objects at him, and blood was coming out from him. Although we can't emulate the qualities of Lord Nityananda, of course he is the Supreme Lord himself. But the examples that we have in the Srimad Bhagavatam is also teaching us how to behave in a certain way to become more self-realized, like Prahlad Maharaj, like Dhruva Maharaj. They were completely surrendering themselves to the Supreme Lord, even though they were put in a lot of difficulties in their life. The Pandavas, what they went through, Queen Kunti, what she went through, Draupadi Devi, what she went through, a lot of humiliation. They were poisoned by cake. They built a beautiful palace made of wax and they tried to burn them down. They were exiled into the forest for 14 years. They were cheated out of their kingdom, their wealth, their opulence by Shakuni and the Kauravas. But these are some of the examples that are shown in the Bhagavatam. It's not just fable stories, it's not just stories for entertainment, it's not like Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings, but these are like real stories that allow us to connect ourselves to these supreme personalities and how we can emulate those same qualities in ourselves. Now, just going back to the verse that we were reading today, the mind is the root cause of lust, anger, pride, greed, lamentation, illusion, and fear. Combined, these constitute bondage to fruitive activity. What learned man would put faith in the mind? Okay, so now, does anybody know a particular verse from the Bhagavad Gita which talks about the 3 gates leading to hell? Okay. Very good, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. You want to say it louder, or? Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhuji. Prabhuji gave such a wonderful class yesterday, so I won't be able to emulate the same sort of spiritual intelligence as you've given. Although I just wanted to say thank you to Damodar Prasad Prabhu for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'm not normally a speaker, neither am I learned, but I do feel very fortunate to come here. I mean, when I first came here, it was actually 42 years ago, probably before most of you were born. I was quite young, but such a great feeling to be back again. But at that time, this was all forest behind me. This road in front was just like a country lane, you know. There was no busy sort of buses going past, trams going past. Such a wonderful feeling. And Those of you who may remember, Prabhuji was quite a senior devotee. You remember in the 80s, most of the temples had so many devotees staying in the community. And here, I'm so amazed how you've been able to manage to keep this temple running after so many years, 42 years, non-stop. Their lordships look so beautiful. The way you maintain the temple, the way you look after the devotees, the quality of the prasadam. So thank you, Damodar, Prasad Prabhu, and all the devotees who've kindly taken care of us while we're staying here. And I wish we could do the same when you come to Bhaktivedanta Manor. So please do come if you do get an opportunity. It's a beautiful temple, one of the favorite temples for Srila Prabhupada. He stayed there for many months. And their Lordship Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda, along with Sitaram Lakshmanaman, Shri Govinitai. And we also have another temple in the city, Shri Shri Radha Londonishwara. So do please come, and we'll do the same by taking care of you as well. So yes, this particular verse Prabhuji was saying is from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 16, verse 21. The translation is, there are 3 gates leading to this hell: lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. There's a small purport, if I just read it. The beginning of demoniac life is described herein. One tries to satisfy his lust, and while he cannot, anger and greed arise. A sane man who does not want to glide down to the species of demoniac life must try to give up these 3 enemies, which can kill the self to such an extent that there will be no possibility of liberation from this material entanglement. And if you read the Bhagavad Gita, there's quite a few points mentioned about the different qualities, the bad sinful qualities, namely anger, lust, greed, pride, envy, illusion. These are the qualities that we should try and give up. These anarthas prevent you from progressing in your spiritual journey. Even though there may be spiritual competition amongst each other, but if it's done in a very friendly way, competing in a spiritual manner, rather than through a point of envy, point of lust, or point of greed, hey, I'm going to be the top secretary and distributor, I'm going to get the highest amount of money, hey, let me serve Srila Prabhupada. Given that these books, transcendental books, to all the fallen conditioned souls, if you change your mood slightly from material greed to spiritual greed, just like it says that when you want to have devotional service, there's only one price that you've got to pay for. And what is that? Greed, yes. But that's spiritual greed. So that's that desire. We want to have greed. Of course, as devotees, you're so occupied with so many activities: management service, deity service, cooking service, cleaning service. So many things that you've got to also keep up with your sadhana, attending morning program, and the body does feel exhausted, and how much more greed can you have? But you'll find that there is some greed always there within us that allows us to progress in our spiritual journey. So although these 3 gates lead into hell, lust, anger, and greed, we should avoid. Just like Prabhuji mentioned about the verse yesterday from the Bhagavad Gita, I'll read it to you again. So this is from chapter 2, verse 62. Yato dhyayayoto vishaya pumshaha sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodha pajayate. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops. And from lust, anger rises. So from any attachment that we have, it may be even our own personal mobile phone, our own sort of smartphone watch, a car. We all have something prestigious that we also feel very attached to. But when you have that attachment from a material point of view, when we see other people having something else or see something else that is much better, there's a feeling of greed that develops from that lust, from wanting to have more and more. And when things don't go in our direction, then what happens? We get frustrated, we get, angry. So from that lust develops, from lust the anger arises. And the next verse that carries on from verse number 63, Krodad bhavati samoha Samohat smriti vibramaha smriti brahmasad buddhi nasho buddhi nasharpanasyati. So from that anger, we get frustrated, we get angry, then complete delusion arises. And from delusion, there is bewilderment of the memory. And when memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. And when you lose your intelligence, then one falls down again into the material pool. So it's like a cycle of effects that happens, and you can notice that easily. When you're driving a car, you get angry, you get frustrated, then before you know it, it ends up into a bit of a road rage, which can be quite easily avoided. There was a story of Radhanath Swami who was driving along in America. He just wanted to drive a car when he was going from one particular place to another place. But at the same time, there was a beautiful scene of while he was traveling. And while he was traveling, he was driving very slowly, and the person behind him was getting very impatient and hooting at the car that he was driving. And when they finally came to their destination, that man pulled his window down and said some unkind words. But Radhanath Swami, out of his humility, just folded his hands. And it's not easy to do that, because when somebody hoots at you or horns at you, you get angry because it may not be your fault at all. But sometimes I notice that when you just accept it and just say Hare Krishna or fold your hands, they get bewildered. Why is he accepting it? I'm shouting at him. I want him to be reciprocative and be proactive by arguing back or fighting. But no, as devotees, we become very humble. We become very tolerant. We try and understand that this is the material world, and this material world is full of anxiety, full of hatred, full of delusion that we do not want to encroach within our heart, which is specifically meant for serving the Supreme Lord, our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. There's many beautiful verses as well from the Bhagavad Gita. If I could share one more verse as well. This is from chapter 3, verse 40. If I say the first line, see if anybody recognizes this verse. Indriyani mano buddhi. Okay, I'll carry on. Asyaya dista sadamuchyate ite vimohayate isha jnanam avritya dehinam. And the translation: the senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the real entity and bewilders him. So the senses, the mind, and intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. So the material body is made of 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. But the subtle body is made out of mind, intelligence, and the ego. Now, His Holiness Bhakti Swami, somebody asked a question to him: when we go to the spiritual world, if we do go, what happens to the subtle body? What happens to the mind, intelligence, and ego? Although the material body gets burnt to ashes, does anybody know what happens to the mind, intelligence, ego? Yeah, when we go to the next body, we take it with us. So we take that consciousness with us in our next body: mind, intelligence, and ego. But supposing if you go back to the spiritual world, what happens to that mind, intelligence, and ego? It just gets dissolved. It just gets disappeared, because you have your original Nitya Atma, your eternal identity. That intelligence, mind, and ego, because it's still connected to the material elements, it just dissipates. Then you have your pure individual Atma. So that mind, intelligence, and ego is so important to control as well. The mind, as it mentions, mind and intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. So when you control the mind, you're able to control many activities in your day-to-day life. And it's not easy to control the mind, because as in the earlier verses from the Bhagavad Gita, it mentions, what's the verse about being tolerant with the different weather? Oh, Patras. Oh no, there's another one. Matra spashastu kodaya sitoshto shugadukada gamba nichos tamtitikshishvabarta. Just remind me the translation, Prabhuji. Do you remember the translation? Yeah. Yeah. That's right, yeah. Yeah. So, Prabhuji, it's just from the tip of my mind, it's just completely to see the mind is so contaminated. Yeah, when you actually are able to tolerate the different, say the weather, the winter season, the summer season, you can also, it's considered to be temporary, it's just considered to be like something which isn't actually there. But if you're able to control that, then at least that's a stepping stone in controlling the mind. And Prabhupada actually explains in the purport, like in the summertime it's very hot, and devotees or people are cooking in the hot weather. It's very, very difficult, and even in the cold weather, it's very difficult to tolerate that such a situation that you're facing. At the moment in England, we're having this tremendous storm, and the wind itself is so powerful. It's very, it's actually uprooted many trees. It's uprooted many sort of buildings. It's damaged a lot of properties. There's a lot of rain falling down. Now, if you think about the wind, Jai Shishi Jagannath Subhadra Balade Maharani Ki Jai. Shishi Gaunitai Ki Jai, Guru Govardhana Ki Jai. Now, if you can imagine how powerful the wind is, now Arjuna is also saying to Krishna, you're asking me to control the wind, you're asking me to control the mind, but the mind is more difficult to control than the wind. Now, if you think about the wind, how powerful it is, it can uproot a tree which has roots embedded deep, deep, deep into the earth foundation. And how is it possible that we can control the mind? And Krishna actually tells Arjuna, wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. So your mind may be drifting away from this place to that place or to another place, but you must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the senses. And it's not so easy, because even further along, Arjuna says, the mind is unsteady, it's very flickering. How can you control it? But Krishna, as he explains further along, just by performing the different yoga system and ultimately bhakti yoga, you can actually control the mind itself. But here, when we mentioned about the wind, I was just reading yesterday how powerful it is, because there was a story between Vasuki. Vasuki is the big serpent that was wrapped around the Meru mountain, or Mandara mountain, and that was used during the churning of the nectar from the churning on the ocean. Now Vasuki was feeling very proud. He felt, I'm a great devotee of Lord Vishnu, and he sort of competed with Vayu, who is the wind god, to say, I'm more powerful than you, I'm a greater devotee than you. And Vayu took that challenge against Vasuki. So they said to Mount Meru, look, the Vasuki is going to wrap himself around Mount Meru, and Vayu is going to try and blow you to see if he can blow Vasuki away. But what they did not do, they did not ask the permission of Mount Meru. So while Vasuki was wrapped around Mount Meru, Vayu was blowing so tremendously, so much force, so much vigor, to see if he could actually dislodge Vasuki, which was wrapped around Mount Meru. But it was not possible. So it's just showing you how powerful the wind was. Eventually, Mount Meru became very weak, became very disturbed by the fact that the wind was blowing so fiercely, and also Vasuki was wrapped around Mount Meru, wrapping himself around, and it was almost like throttling him as well. So Mount Meru prayed to Lord Brahma. Brahma sort of tried to pacify Vayu and Vasuki. What are you doing? You're elevated celestial beings. Why are you competing with each other? Why are you fighting amongst each other? But eventually they had to let go. But the power of Vasuki wrapped around Mount Meru, and the ferocious blowing of the wind, Vayu, caused the top of the Mount Meru to break away, and that top of the mountain is known as the Three Crown Top Mountains in Sri Lanka, or Lanka as it was called at that time. At that time, Lanka was such a beautiful place that was actually created for the celestial beings so they could actually enjoy themselves as a place of heavenly beauty. And Kubera, the treasurer, he was actually a cousin of Ravana. He actually built the beautiful palace along with Vishvakarma, the city that was actually been taken over by Ravana eventually. But anyway, it just shows you how strong the wind is. When you control the wind, it's more difficult to control the wind, or rather, more difficult to control the mind than the wind. But you can see how powerful the wind is. So to control the wind is so difficult by this example. But Prabhupada actually gives us such wonderful opportunities by performing devotional service, of which 9 prevalent devotional service: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dashyam, Sakyam, Atmayati Vedam. If we can actually perform any of these 9 devotional services, serving the Supreme Lord, controlling our mind, controlling our senses, controlling all the things that agitates our mind, being with the association of the devotees, taking shelter of a spiritual authority as well, is so important, because many devotees, I'm sure Prabhuji, I've forgotten your name, Prabhuji, but he's been here in the movement for many years. He could see that the devotees that you remember in those days from 1975, and now many of them have unfortunately left the movement. Some sadly passed away, some changed ashram, many move away from the temple facility because of job opportunities or job prospects or family life. But it's so important to be associated to a temple, because if you don't, many devotees slowly disappear and you don't see them again. Of course, as a duty of a Vaishnava, we're supposed to be like desiratories, as we say the prayers every day. Vanchakapatarubhyascha, we're like desiratories full of compassion. And we have to try our best, although we are preaching so hard to new devotees in Sankirtan, it's so important that we take care of the devotees who are there in the movement, who've served Srila Prabhupada, who've served the devotees. And there was a TV advert many years ago in England, and it was all about a bank called HSBC. And the advert was that, is your bank trying very hard to find new customers when they're not taking care of the existing customers? So as devotees, we have to really take care of each other. We may not be beautiful singers, we may not be the best pujaris, we may not be the most beautiful kirtan leaders or even cooking, but certainly each quality, as we develop by associating with devotees, we develop those wonderful qualities, and we have that spiritual family, that spiritual connection, that we support each other, love each other, help each other. Devotees go through difficult times, devotees go through married life and have unfortunate situations, devotees go through financial situations. Many devotees who have surrendered themselves to the movement, and sadly their health deteriorates. There's few devotees at Bhaktivedanta Mana, they serve so intensely. Like one devotee, Prayojana Prabhu, is quite elderly, he's probably about 65 now, but he's in a wheelchair now. But every morning at Mangalati, before Mangalati, he used to clean the shoe room, he used to clean the hallway. So it's all nice and prepared for the devotees who come for a morning program. But because he neglected his body as well, which is important to take care of your body, he's now in a wheelchair. But amazingly, it's so nice, because even with his pension money, he's still using that money to distribute or sponsor books. So recently he sponsored 10 sets of Srimad Bhagavatam, 7 sets of Srimad Bhagavatam, so he could give it to devotees who may not be able to afford it. So even though he's a pensioner and doesn't have much money, he's been able to give that money or those books, Srimad Bhagavatams, to devotees who may not be able to afford it. So you see those examples of devotees who may not be able to do so much service anymore, but they're still utilizing whatever way and energy they have in serving Krishna and the devotees. just talking about skillful activities, there's 3 functions that causes skillful activities. Does anybody know what they are? Activities of the, we said one of them already. The mind. Yes, that's very good. Activities of the senses. And the third one? No. Activities of the words. So I suppose from wisdom, intelligence and words. So those sinful activities, whatever activities you do, whatever's in your mind can cause sinful reaction. Whatever your words are could cause sinful reactions. Devamrita Maharaj, he gave a really good class once. If you listen to his classes, it'll make you laugh and laugh and laugh, but they have so many words of wisdom. He said something really important that so it's I sort of remember it as well, but of course I don't always follow it. He says that one word could change the better for one person, or one word could change for the worst of another person. So if you say something nicely, hey, Damodar Prasad, you're a wonderful temple president. You know, you feel happy, you feel obliged, you want to serve more. Hey, Damodar Prasad, you're not a very good temple president. How would he feel? He'd feel dejected. He'd feel, wow, what am I doing? I'm serving all the devotees nicely. So one word could actually cause somebody to commit sinful activities because he feels dejected, somebody's not appreciating him. Although as a devotee we don't want appreciation or reverence, but it's so important that we still have to praise and encourage devotees in every way. Hey, this prasadam that you cooked, this maha you cooked for the lordships was so beautiful. Of course, the devotee doesn't want that honor, but he feels, wow, let me make something new for the lordships. Wow, the lordships look so beautiful. They're dressed so nicely. Beautiful dresses. Who designed the outfit? Who dressed the jewelry? You know, so many nice things you could say to a devotee to make them feel more happier, make them feel more sort of focused on their spiritual journey, give them a bit of a booster in their spiritual life. Hey, you're going out on Sankirtan. Please accept my blessings. Please accept the blessings of Srila Prabhupada so you could go out on books and distribute. So Shiva Maharaj is quite an amazing personality. He was going out on books for, even in his old age right now, I think he's 70 plus, and he's still going out on book distribution, giving out to the people out on the street. So many, many years ago, I remember this particular class he gave. I was only 16 at that time, but I always remember it for the rest of my life. He said that Sankirtan warriors aren't just ordinary devotees, they're very important. In fact, Srila Prabhupada also mentions the most important activity in ISKCON is book distribution. Of course, we need a temple, we need beautiful lordships, otherwise if we just have a mud hut, who will come to our place? They'll just think that we're just ordinary people. So Shiva Maharaj was saying that you should actually respect Sankirtan devotees very sincerely at a high position. And he said that if a Sankirtan devotee comes back from book distribution, you should also offer your respects to them. And the important reason why is because it's all very well being in the temple room, because it's like a joy of comfort. And even Srila Prabhupada says the temple isn't just meant for people staying in here, sleeping, eating, resting, but we should be going out as well. So that same evening, I remember Shiva Maharaj, he came back from book distribution. He was quite a young sannyasi at that time, 1979 that was. And then he came, he was walking towards Bhaktivedanta Manor, and I saw him and I offered my obeisances to him. And he also showed his respect to me. So that's why I always remember that particular day and that particular class he gave and how he reacted. So I always think when Sankirtan devotees go, you know, please, please, please show all respects to each and every one of them, because they're not just ordinary personalities. Of course, we're all trying our best in our spiritual way, our spiritual journey, to help the Srila Prabhupada's movement to. And also, I think Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually mentioned we should take this burden as well, all of us simultaneously. The burden meaning a spiritual burden to go out and distribute these books. And even if you give a book, even if they hold the book, even if they don't read it, or even if you give that, if that person gives that book to somebody else, then they get spiritual benefit. The person who gives that book to that person also gets spiritual benefit. the important thing is, even if you read the beautiful stories of Sankirtan, there was one particular story where somebody actually threw a Prabhupada book in a dustbin, and somebody actually picked it up, and that book, he read it, he became so enamored by the spiritual knowledge in that book, and he actually became a devotee, and later on he became a temple president. There was another story I remember reading where somebody got a Bhagavad Gita in a foreign place. It was an English book of Bhagavad Gita, but he didn't read it himself, but his son did, and it was on the shelf. And because he was going to university, he wanted to learn English, and he became attached to reading the Bhagavad Gita so he could improve his English vocabulary. And as a result, by just reading the Bhagavad Gita, he became a devotee, and he became a full-time devotee. And this was a Sankirtan story just recently as well. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for allowing me to speak. Please forgive me for any offenses I've made or any mistakes I've made. And I really appreciate all the kindness the devotees have shown to myself and my wife coming here, because our son Prahlad, he got his civil marriage recently in Zurich. So please bless him for his spiritual journey as he progresses onto the next stage of his ashram as well. Thank you. Is there any questions or comments at all? Yes, Prabhuji. Hopefully I can try my best to answer.
You quoted this verse that the senses, the mind and the intelligence are sitting places or influenced by, occupied by lust.
Yeah.
So if also the intelligence is as influence is occupied by lust, how do you know? How can you discriminate how to act properly, and if your intelligence is also polluted?
Yeah. So that intelligence, of course, there's that material intelligence and there's that spiritual intelligence. And also, sometimes unconsciously we have that intelligence that we also feel that we're better or try to improve ourselves. Just like in Krishna and Bhagavad Gita mentions, we may refrain from the objects of the senses, but our mind still dwells on them. But such a person is considered to be a pretender. So we have to be careful that although our mind intelligence is actually could be split into two ways, but the intelligence that we're looking for is the spiritual intelligence, which is from the Shastra, from the Sadhu, and so forth. But that lust is always going to be there. It is one of the most predominant activities in our mind. Even, I'm not sure if Srila Prabhupada mentioned this, but this particular story of Nirmal. Nirmal was an administrator to King Akbar, and King Akbar asked his assistant, his minister, what is the most thing or object that is in one's mind? And he mentioned about beauty, about lust. He said, no, I have so much wealth, I don't need beauty or anything at all. So then King Nirmal actually showed Akbar to a place where a person was about to die, but the person was being taken care of by a beautiful nurse. And although he was dying on his deathbed, he was still thinking about the nurse, the beauty of the nurse, even though he may have had so much wealth. So King Akbar understood that even when you have everything in your life, you have your family, your loved one, if you see something attractive, that causes that desire, that lust to be within us. But specifically on your question, I can only say that just that intelligence, by that spiritual intelligence, is by just constantly reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, and also, as I mentioned earlier on, by occupying our mind and senses, by Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, by the 9 devotional practices in devotional life. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. I'm sure it hasn't fully, but...
Yes, thank you. Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Spiritual.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Ира, переведи, пожалуйста. В Шримад Бхагаватам мы читаем, что Верховная Личность Бога проявилась в 4 личностях. Васудева, Санкаршана, Прадьюмна и Анирудха.
Pradyumna, Pradyumna and Aniruddha.
И Анирудха — это ум. Анирудха — это ум. Одна из личностей — это ум. А в этом стихе, который вы сегодня комментируете, написано, что ум — источник вожделения, гнева, страха и всего. Так что получается? Источник — это личность Кришны?
Krishna is the cause of everything, but at the same time, thank you very much. So the question Mataji was asking, if this is correct, if lust is the cause of all our activities, our sinful activities, but Krishna, is he not the cause of this lust? But Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He made this material world, but it's also aloof from this material world. So we have our independence, we have our own choices, we have our own destiny. We can decide what we want to do. We can take a left or a right. I'm not sure if you've seen the film The Matrix. They ask him, do you want to take the red pill or the blue pill? So he has to make that choice. So from your decisions, your mind, you've got to make that choice. How do I want to carry on with my life? You can see the material world is full of sinful activities. You see posters of attraction for the opposite sex. So that intelligence is causing our mind to deviate onto the material platform. So although Krishna is the creator of this whole spiritual cosmic manifestation and the material manifestation, but he's not necessarily controlling it to our own desire. We have a certain free will, and we can choose what we want to do. So your mind could consider having lusty desires or sinful activities, or you could also have that desire to be in the mode of goodness. So you have your mode of goodness, passion, and anger. From the anger, you have the sinful qualities, anger, lust, greed, etc. But the idea is that we have to surpass that poor qualities of ignorance and passion to go to mode of goodness. But beyond that goodness is pure goodness. Then that's where we become free, where are intelligent. Just like the gopis, we see that although they have so much love for Krishna, but their love isn't lust like that we see from a material sense. Their love or lust for Krishna is of the highest level. And that is the level that we're supposed to get to. But because we have to act as devotees or disciples or servants of Krishna, we cannot compare ourselves to the gopis' love. We can certainly love Krishna in so many ways. My dear Lord, you look so beautiful. But we cannot have that same desire as the gopis have, because that is a high bhava that we cannot emulate at all. Yeah? I hope that answers your question. Yeah? Thank you. Do you have a question?
Yes. It's already made, so I don't know.
Yeah, but...
So we heard that these 6 things, lust, anger, pride, lamentation, illusion, and fear, are caused by the mind, right?
Yeah.
And if you really think about it, we should actually, if we feel these emotions are coming up, we should immediately identify that it's an action from the mind, and then they'll take it seriously.
Yeah.
But usually it's a bit more difficult. So what would you suggest to do in that moments when you actually see, I have these emotions?
Yeah, that's a very nice question. Jamuna Mataji is asking a question. Although you have the anger, lust, greed, pride, and illusion, and it all comes from the mind, but what happens when you do have those tendencies come into your mind? Because even as devotees, as Prabhuji was mentioned from the verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam yesterday, the devotee king, Lord Shiva got affected by just seeing the beautiful form of Lord Vishnu as Mohini, and the great sage, what was the sage's name? Surabhi, yes, Subari Muni. He fell down when he was actually underwater meditating, and he saw a couple of fishes mating and so forth. It got disturbed his mind. So what happens, a lot of the activities that we do is also depending on our own personalities as well. So sometimes, unfortunately, many, or not unfortunately, depending on the circumstances, many of us have been coming to Krishna consciousness from a material life, and we have certain tendencies that are still attached to those memories from our childhood. Maybe we could be drinking, smoking, eating meat, and it's sometimes that desire sometimes may inadvertently come, and that becomes through offenses as well. When you're becoming offensive to other devotees, when you're becoming offensive to your own self by not performing the sadhana properly, when you may be not fully committed in your devotional service, serving the devotees, serving their lordships, serving Srila Prabhupada, serving Guru Maharaj, also not obeying the instructions of the spiritual master. We recite those 10 offenses about chanting the holy name. So those sinful activities may come about by not fully understanding the spiritual practices in our devotional life. Hence the reason why having that spiritual association, having the morning program, continuing your sadhana, serving in whatever way you can, really helps us to control our mind. Like for instance, yesterday we went to Zurich city centre, and although we thought it would be a nice place to just Zurich while we're there, but actually our mind got disturbed because everybody was drinking, eating meat, and there was the horrible smell of smoke everywhere. People are thinking they were having a good time. They may be having a good time momentarily, but it's not like something which is transcendentally eternal. Whatever you do in Krishna consciousness, even as sweeping the floor, actually Krishna always remembers that. We may not remember it ourselves, but Krishna always remembers everything that you do. So it's so important that when we control our mind, if a certain thing comes into our mind, just say, have I committed an offense to somebody? Have I not been reading properly? Have I not been coming to morning program? Have I not dressed the deities nicely? Have I not cooked nicely? So sometimes when we have a mentor, we have somebody to support us, guide us, a spiritual authority, they help us. Hey Prabhuji, I think you're sort of slacking in your spiritual activities. Maybe you need a little time out, do some reading. Maybe you need to go to a spiritual retreat, go to Vrindavan, Mayapur, where you could recuperate spiritually. Maybe you're disturbed by the influence of other people, perhaps bullying you, harassing you, or causing you a little grief. Maybe there's certain little disturbances in our life that causes our mind to be disturbed. Maybe it's right now, there's nothing worse than the internet nowadays because it's so easy to find information, and certain things are always not very palatable. Things saying horrible things about ISKCON as well, about Srila Prabhupada. Even different groups, different organizations are always condemning the spiritual authorities within ISKCON. And it is disturbing, and it actually affects your mind, and you tend to almost like agree with them and not agree with them, but also you have to speak to a spiritual authority to help you be strong, be faithful, be completely continuous in your service to serve in Srila Prabhupada, and by following the authority as well. Yeah. So specifically for each mind, and every mind has a different thought. I couldn't answer for each person's mind, but certainly in a nutshell, certainly controlling our mind by continuing our morning program, chanting nicely, serving the spiritual authorities, and doing our devotional duties day to day. Yeah? Which you're doing already. You wanna do? Right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak. Please forgive me for any mistakes. And Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Bhagavad Bhagavatam ki jai, the most beautiful Lord Shiv Jagannath Subhadra Baladeva ki jai, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai, Guru Govardhan ki jai, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. Jai.